It's the Valley's most in-depth weather forecast here for Tuesday evening, January the 9th, 2018. A no-hype weather video. We just give you the straight dope on this video, and I like to think I do the same on social media as well. With a big storm coming at the end of the week and into the weekend, there's a lot of bad information out there on social media. Even some stuff being shared by TV stations in the Cleveland market and the Columbus market that I just kind of look at and I'm like, oh, don't do that. Because people latch on to the worst case scenario and it gets shared like crazy and spreads like wildfire, and a lot of it is just bogus and stuff that is very, very unlikely to happen. So let's give you the straight dope on what to expect. We're going to start with what's going on now in the next couple of days, then we'll spend a lot of time on the Friday and Saturday storm. High-res satellite today showing the ice over Lake Erie. Now, this is cloudiness here, but this is ice, of course. Across much of Lake Erie, the ice has been expanding of late, and now we're up to 80 to 85% or so ice coverage on Lake Erie. There's still some open water, certainly, but a fair amount of ice out there on the lake. In fact, let's show you the percentages here. Now, again, everywhere where the colors are showing up here, that doesn't mean it's completely iced over. Check out the legend up top here, in the red area. That means 80 to 100% of that area is covered by ice. In the orange, it's 60 to 80. There's a fair amount of ice, especially for this early in the season, and especially considering the lack of ice we've had on the Great Lakes over the last couple of years. All right, radar and satellite composite across the country today. The big weather story across the country today is actually out west. Flooding and mudslides and, unfortunately, fatalities in some parts of Southern California as a result of the massive mudslides. They've been inundated with rain around Las Vegas today. And in the meantime, whoops, I didn't mean to get out of that graphic. In the meantime, we have a pretty quiet weather pattern as we speak across the middle of the country and across the east as well. That's going to change a little bit as we go into the day tomorrow with a warm front heading our way. So let's show you what to expect tomorrow. It's going to cloud back up after a pretty uneventful night for tonight, and a little bit of moisture heading our way. This doesn't look like much. It looks like less than it looked like yesterday. So I toned down our rain chances. You can get those hourly rain chances on the Storm Tracker 21 app. Don't forget about that. But, it's just going to try to spit rain or shower a couple of times starting around lunchtime tomorrow. And there's like a 5 to 10% chance of a brief period of freezing rain with this. If it were to occur, it'd be pretty inconsequential and non-impactful. But there's a chance that it tries to rain a little bit when the temperature's up to 30 or 31 around lunchtime tomorrow. Not something I'm going to spend a lot of time worrying about. I don't think it's a very likely situation. So a little bit of rain tomorrow. Our rain chances are elevated, yes, but again, it's not going to be much rain. Just kind of a nuisance, and temperatures will rise into the 40s. And speaking of rising temperatures, boy, spring fever coming up on Thursday. This is a day that we have been longing for. I think it's largely dry. It could be a stray afternoon shower, no big deal. But upper 50s. Get out and finally take the dog for a walk. Maybe a lot of the snow will be off the sidewalks by that point. And maybe wash the car. It's going to be a nice day to do that. Although you may be throwing your money away a little bit on washing the car on Thursday because of what's coming Friday and into the day on Saturday. So here's the beginnings of our setup for our mess on Friday. Wave of low pressure is going to form down here and then ride northward. Its exact eventual track is very, very important. A more easterly track would have implications, a more westerly track would have implications, and small variations in this track can make a large difference. And that's why, this far out, it's only Tuesday. That's why we're not giving you exact numbers in the forecast yet. We're going to talk about percentages and things like that, but we're not going to go out and say X amount of inches to X amount of inches is our forecast just yet, because again, there's a lot yet to be determined on the exact track of this, but it's a setup where Arctic air is coming in from the north and west, and plenty of Gulf moisture is coming up from the south. In fact, a way of illustrating this is to look at the atmospheric moisture, and we're going to pause this late in the day or I should say mid-afternoon on Friday. That's a pretty good-looking weather map for a big storm. You've got all this dry air out here and a big flow, a big plume of moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico and coming north. And where these meet, yeah, there's going to be some weather to talk about. That is for sure. And again, things will get underway with rain on Friday before we start to see some mixed precipitation later in the day on Friday. Let me switch sources on you here. Whoops. And we'll talk about... what I want to talk about is some of the modeling as we go out into a Friday and into Saturday as well. There we go. I want to show you the European model. Now, I put up a blog this morning detailing some of the modeling that was out this morning. Of course, we've got new runs of the models this afternoon. I'm going to show you the latest run of the European model here, and what we're looking at is what we call the ensemble modeling. In other words, kind of the parent model, or the top dog European model is taken and tweaked a bunch of times. The initial weather conditions that go into the model are tweaked a bunch of times, and the reason for that is to account for the inevitable errors that are going to go into any model when it's initialized. So you tweak all those conditions a little bit and then keep running the model, and you get different solutions based on those small tweaks. When those different tweaks result in a big spread of solutions, then your forecast confidence is low. When the spread of solutions is smaller as a result of those tweaks, then our forecast confidence goes up. All these little L's here on the map are the placement of the center of the storm by the European Ensemble members Friday evening at 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. I should say. There's a pretty good clustering here. There's not a huge spread, and kind of the average is right in through here. And so our forecast confidence when it comes to this particular model, I would say, is a little above average for this far out, a few days out. There's not a huge spread in the modeling here. The European model's been fairly consistent. It's changed a little, but it's been fairly consistent over the last couple of days. So this is the overall track. Low, probably coming up through West Virginia, coming up into Pennsylvania, and then pushing over towards eastern PA, up into southeast New York, and then eventually impacting New England. Now, when we start talking about snow totals, again, what I like to do a few days out is show you ensemble modeling, the average. The European ensemble model has 51 different runs in it, and we look at the average of those 51 runs, and what we get is a map that looks like this. The purple areas here, the legend is not shown, but the purple areas are 6 inches plus. Anything that is in the blue is less than 6 inches. So you can see the lollipop here is advertised to be around Sandusky, around Mansfield, Cleveland, up into Windsor, maybe Detroit, and heading over towards the Toronto area. That's kind of where the lollipop is on the European. The GFS model, same idea. It's an ensemble. We're looking at the ensemble mean. It has the lollipop in kind of the same, general vicinity. Here's the European, here's the GFS. The GFS has shifted towards the European solution. No surprise, over the last 12 hours. We see this a lot when we start talking about storms a few days away, when there's a spread between the European and GFS. More often than not, the GFS is going to kind of cave to the European. The European's a better model. It's not always right, and sometimes the GFS does better, but more often than not, the better money is on the European model. So the GFS is shifting in that direction, again, keeping the lollipop mostly to our north and west. When we talk about odds of certain amounts of snow occurring, here's a look at the European odds of 3 inches or more of snow. And where the lollipop is here around Cleveland and points north and east, that correlates to odds of around 70 to 90% chance of 3 inches or more. For us locally, we're kind of in this pale yellow, 50 to 60% chance of 3 inches or more. Pretty decent odds. When we shift then to the odds of 6 inches or more, the odds, of course, go down. The lollipop right now shown to be about 50 to 60% odds of 6 inches or more in Sandusky, Cleveland area. And then for the Mahoning and Shenango valleys, it's more like, say, between 10 and 40%. The odds of 6 inches or more worth of snow coming our way. And the timing on this would suggest that it's rain Friday morning. Then we have a chance of some icing coming into Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and perhaps a lot of Friday night, and then a change over to snow late Friday night and heading into Saturday morning. Our concerns with snow, I just spent a lot of time talking about snow. Our concerns with snow are mostly Saturday morning. The ice is more of a concern Friday late in the day and into Friday night. So let's start talking about what I have for the actual forecast here before we get too much ahead of ourselves. And what's going on with my... Pardon my moving stuff around here. There we go. My graphics were locking up a little bit on me. I'm glad I was able to get them started again. This is what I've done with this graphic, showing the areas that impactful ice is most likely. And what I mean by impactful ice or significant ice is not just a little glaze on your windshield that you got to scrape off, but the kind of ice that causes travel disruptions, that may adhere to trees, power lines, and cause those sorts of disruptions. We're in the zone where I think, we've got a decent chance of that sort of thing occurring, especially late Friday and Friday night. When we look at some of the modeling here, as far as ice accretion, only a couple of our models go out this far. The NAM model tails off after Friday night because it only goes out that far. But here's the GFS, here's the European. And the GFS and European, along with the NAM, suggest that we see maybe a quarter of an inch worth of ice. And if that were to be right, that's problematic. When we're talking about ice accretion, once we get up to a couple of tenths or a quarter of an inch, that makes untreated surfaces very slippery. And when you get that sort of ice weighing on tree limbs, especially if they're weak, they can bend and break and maybe fall down on power lines and that sort of thing. And when you get over a quarter of an inch, then that's a bona fide ice storm. And that's something I can't rule out just yet. Do I think that's especially likely? Maybe not, but I can't rule it out just yet. Now, when it comes to the highest snow accumulations, when I'm talking about heavy snow potential here, I'm generally talking about 6 inches or more. I think the highest odds of 6 inches or more worth of snow are closer to Cleveland, Columbus, kind of the I-71 corridor on north and west. So I'm actually a little more concerned about the ice rather than the snow here. I do think it's going to snow, and I do think it'll be enough to shovel. But do I think it goes crazy with snow? Do I think we get a foot in some places? No, absolutely not. Here's what I've done with the percent chances of certain amounts of snow across our viewing area. I have the highest odds at about 55% of 3 to 6 inches worth of snow, with lower odds for the lower amounts, 1 to 3, and even lower for 6 plus. So right now I think the most likely snow accumulation is 3 to perhaps as much as 6 inches. That's certainly an inconveniencing amount, and it can cause some travel problems Saturday morning. But this isn't looking to me like it's all that likely to be a huge snowstorm. I'm actually a little more concerned about ice than I am the impacts from snow right now. This morning I put a blog on ericwfmj.com. It's my weather blog. Go check that out. In addition to this video, you can read all about the storm. And what I put on the blog this morning was based on this morning's modeling. There's been some changes this afternoon, but the overall ideas are still pretty good. All right, long enough video. Got into the weeds a little bit there with you. Thanks, if you're still watching, for sticking with me. I'm going to have more this evening on social media. Don't forget the Storm Tracker 21 app will be buzzing you and sending out push notifications and alerts and that sort of thing as we get a little bit closer to the storm. And I'll have a full update tonight on 21 News at 11. Thanks for watching Weather for Weather Geeks, and have a great Tuesday night.